Hello dear students, today we'll discuss physiology of transport of CO2 in the blood as per NMC competency PY 6.3. Now let's see how there is a transport of gases across our whole system. This is the inspired air through this, which consists of almost about partial pressure of oxygen 160 mL of mercury and partial pressure of CO2 is 0.3 mL of mercury. This is the inspired air. Now in the blood you can see in arterial blood now it is partial pressure of oxygen is 95 millimeters of mercury and partial pressure of CO2 is 40 now. Now in the tissue fluid where there is actually constantly metabolic processes are taking place, oxygen is being consumed and there is a production of CO2 in the Krebs cycle. So you can see it is 46 millimeters of mercury is the partial pressure of CO2 in the blood. Now it is exchanged at the vein, this at capillaries. So venous blood will be rich in CO2 and poor in oxygen. So you can see this is the calculation now which is going here now, and that is being expired. So expired air will have a concentration of partial pressure of CO2 32 mL of mercury. Now let's see how the transport from here to here it takes place. So there is production of CO2 at the tissues. It is taken by venous blood and it is exchanged at the lungs at the respiratory membrane. CO2 is given out from the blood and oxygen is entering the blood, and from lungs through expiration CO2 is going out. So let's today discuss this process, means how the CO2 is coming out of the body in the expired air. Under normal resting condition, each 100 ml of deoxygenated blood contains the equivalent of 53 ml of gaseous CO2, which is transported in the blood in three main forms. The solubility of CO2 in the blood is about 20 times that of oxygen. Now here is the cell which is producing CO2 in presence of oxygen. In the Krebs cycle, CO2 is formed. Now this CO2 enters in the interstitial space. Now from here it will enter in the plasma and here it is transported. Now let's see what is the mode of transport. The first transport mode is CO2 will enter in the RBCs. It will combine with water to form H2CO3. Now here H2CO3 dissociates to form HCO3, that is bicarbonate, and H ions are released. Now this is the main dominant form of transport of CO2 in the blood in HCO3 form. So CO2 is combining with the water in presence of carbonic anhydrase and H2CO3 is formed. Now this H2CO3 is transported. This is the first form. Second form, the CO2 combines with hemoglobin, displacing the oxygen from here, and combination of hemoglobin CO2 is transported in the blood. This is the second form. And third form is in the dissolved form. Plain, it goes in the plasma in the dissolved form. So in these three formats, there is a transport of CO2. Now this reaction means presence of CO2 is displacing the oxygen. This is helping basically release of oxygen because we want to deliver oxygen to the tissues. So here combination of CO2 means presence of CO2 will displace the hemoglobin oxygen combination and oxygen is released. It is utilized by the cell and this effect is called as a Bode's effect. Now here you can see transport form. Maximum dominant form is in form of HCO3, that is almost 73%, 23% in combination with hemoglobin and some 7% as a dissolved in the plasma. At tissues, what happens now? So here I have given in this format. Here H ions will combine with HbO2. So oxygen is released and HN combines with this hemoglobin. So this acidic format actually releases the oxygen. So it is helping in delivery of oxygen. So this effect is called as a Bohr's effect. This concentration of CO2 will displace the oxygen from the hemoglobin. So this is the format of transport of CO2. Now at the alveoli what happens? CO2 is coming in high concentration there, but alveoli are having high concentration of oxygen also. So this HCO3 now again it combines with Hance to form H2CO3, and H2CO3 dissolved to form CO2 and water. Now CO2 is released. Now CO2 is coming out in the expiration. It is expired. So the bicarbonate is combining with Hance to form H2CO3. This is the one. Dissolved is as going as it is, and the one which is in combination with hemoglobin. Now here what is happening? There is a high concentration of oxygen at alveoli. Now this high concentration of alveoli will displace CO2 from the hemoglobin, and this will help in the release of CO2. This is called as Halden's effect. Means high concentration of oxygen will displace CO2 from the hemoglobin at alveoli. Exactly reverse happens at the tissues, where high concentration of CO2 is displacing oxygen from the hemoglobin. So here there it is helping in delivery of oxygen to the tissues, and here it is helping in delivery of alveolar CO2 in the alveoli, so that it can be expired easily. So these two effects, Bohr's effect and increase in CO2 in the blood, causes oxygen to be displaced from hemoglobin, which is an important factor in increasing oxygen transport. Halden's effect is the reverse of this one. Binding of oxygen with hemoglobin tends to displace CO2 from the blood. Indeed, this effect called Halden's effect is important for CO2 transport. Now, one additional thing takes place at the tissues because of the HCO3 which is released. HCO3 leaves the red cells in exchange for chloride. This process is called as chloride shift. The chloride shift occurs rapidly and is essentially complete within 1 second. For each CO2 molecule added to a red cells, there is increase of one osmotically active particle in the cell, either an HCO3 or chloride. Consequently, red cell takes up water and increase in the size. So this effect is called as a chloride shift. So here you can see the HCO3 which form is going out of the cell in exchange for chloride. So osmotically active substance coming inside will drag water, along with that cell size increases. Now here you can see transport CO2 which is formed. First format is HCO3, 70% it is. Second is in combination with hemoglobin, 23%, and third is a dissolved form. So these are the formats of transport of CO2 in the blood. Oxygen is happening along with hemoglobin, that is 97%, 3% in the dissolved format. So here we are finishing the CO2 transport in the blood.